Thank you so much, leaders, for joining us on another episode of Dawdle.live Podcast. Thank you so much for supporting us thick and thin for the last 2 years. Today, I've got a very special guest with me. I've got Vineet joining us. He's the founder and CEO of Atypical Advantage, which is a leading inclusion platform creating livelihood opportunities for persons with disabilities. And how? Through jobs, skilling, arts, and corporate inclusion programs. He's an IM Bangalore alumnus, and Vineet has built a mission driven venture that is changing how India looks at disability, talent, and employability. His work focuses on enabling dignity, independence, and real economic participation at a scale. I welcome you, Vineet, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me here.
Would love to start with the real moment behind Atypical Advantage. What was that exact moment where you felt that this is needed? Was it a personal accident or a frustration or a lived experience that triggered this idea?
So just to give you a very quick background about myself. So I'm from Jamshedpur, and I have this condition called retinitis pigmentosa, in which what happens is your sight keeps on going down as age progresses. So technically, I'm trying to fight against time, and I had this condition from the beginning. Me, my brother, both have this condition. But we were always good in studies as such. Graduated from IIM Bangalore, worked 5 years in the corporate space. Never faced the discrimination myself, but I use a screen reader for doing pretty much everything. So it's a text to speech software called JAWS, which helps me to navigate my computer, navigate my smartphone. But I have largely become independent despite some of these challenges as such. But after working 5 years in the corporate space, where I had hired more than 500 plus people with disabilities myself, as such, run inclusion programs for a very large retail company, made shopping accessible for people with disabilities in India, launched something called Quiet Hour, where 15,000 people on the autism spectrum shopped in stores to enjoy the. After doing all of this, I realized that there was nothing systematic for people with disabilities. And I actually met a mentor called Venkat Krishnan. He was the founder of Give India and right now runs India Welfare Trust. And that exact moment, I would say, is so he told me, look, Vineet, you are blind. You're from a middle class family. You are from a good business school, have a lot of corporate experience. If you don't solve this problem for people with disabilities, no one else would. It's not about you or me, but India will forever lose an opportunity to help people with disabilities at scale. And I thought that, this makes a lot of sense. And what would happen even if I try this, right? Because I can always go back to the corporate space. So, yeah, mix of my own lived experience and earning money post 5 years of corporate stint. I thought that, let me try to do something in the livelihood space for people with disabilities. I personally think that people who have high pedigree are from good educational backgrounds need to give back in some ways, because if the cream of the nation or the middle class of India would not step up to take these risks to help people in need, I don't think anyone else would. So that is my thought process. And yeah, wanted to work on a tough problem. And I think this is an interesting problem which I want to solve within my lifetime.
Very inspiring, Vineet. We both have kind of common background in terms of the cities we belong to. So I've lived in Ranchi for a very long time, and Jamshedpur is very nearby. Vineet, talking about what are the common barriers that people with disabilities face when it comes to earning a livelihood?
So, see, there's a lot of discrimination for people with disabilities in the corporate space. Just try sending CVs to 10 different companies saying you are blind or deaf, you'll not find a response. So that's one. The second thing is look at the physical infrastructure barriers in our country, right? Like to even go to school, board a bus, take a auto or a cab. Most of the systems or physical infra in our country is not designed for people with disabilities, be it accessible ramps, washrooms, and accessible transportation, even accessible buildings, railways, and so on. So there's mix of problems, attitudinal barriers, and then there is physical infrastructure barriers. Again, when I say physical infrastructure, I would also cover the digital infrastructure barriers. Like, for example, lot of the websites and the apps or even recruitment websites might not be accessible to people with disabilities. So yeah, I'm very sure the educational barriers people already would be aware of. If you are a person with disability and you want to study in a mainstream school, the principal of that school might deny you admissions. It's a lot of complex issue, I would say, mix of all possible challenges. And again, for women with disabilities, it's largely higher than men with disabilities. And a lot of statistics are there. Close to more than 70 million people with disabilities are there in a country, and 10% of the global population have some disability. Yet we have not been able to arrive at a systems level change in India.
There are a lot of companies, with very good intentions of hiring people with disabilities. Why do you feel that, conventional hiring systems fail even when the intentions are good?
First of all, the companies which you would say are handful or a few companies which you can largely count on your fingertips. Conventional hiring systems completely collapses in a lot of things. Like as I mentioned, see, the recruitment platform of those companies might not be accessible for a blind person or a deaf person. Same way, if you need support during an interview, could be sign language interpreter, could be an accessible space itself, that might not be possible. The third thing is companies lack physical infrastructure as well as digital infrastructure for welcoming people with disabilities as such. So see, in fact, this was a question which was actually asked, that why have you built this platform itself? Because technically, see, I believe that our platform is exclusionary. Even if we try to run inclusion programs, we are technically separating people out from the rest and creating a separate platform as such. And see, my vision of this platform is that it should not exist. I need to make our platform redundant in that sense. We are only there because of the inequality in the society, because of the physical infrastructure barriers, and because of the lack of attitudes within companies. If all of this were corrected, you don't need a platform like ours actually. So the sooner we make ourselves redundant, that's the vision. And if we can make that happen, nothing like it. But till the time it is not there, this platform has a lot of merit to continue and serve people with the disabilities. And again, if you look at severe people with disabilities, there are more biases and more challenges for them. Companies might do a lot of token hiring of people with disabilities, but don't have the intent or even willingness to upskill them or selves or have upward career mobility for them.
Now we'll take you back a little and would love to understand from you that what was the first version of Atypical Advantage look like? What were the early challenges that you faced while building trust with candidates as well as with the corporates?
Okay, so just to give everyone a background, so what Atypical Advantage largely does is it tries to be the matchmaker between people with disabilities and companies. We have are now working with 450 plus large companies in India, close to 5,000 plus people with disabilities impacted so far with jobs or helping artists and performers with disabilities, and also trying to running upskilling programs for them, train and hire programs, and also upskilling companies with sensitizing workforce. So that's what we do. The early version actually, it's very interesting. I honestly, did not want to even build a for profit or even a non-profit venture like a typical advantage. I wanted to make it like 100% volunteer driven platform, like a Mozilla or a Wikipedia, because I was inspired by a lot of volunteer driven stuff globally. So initial thought process was that people with disability and their mothers would manage the backend, and as such could be caretakers, helping us with corporates and helping us with the talent. Similarly, experts from people with disabilities would help us to connect with companies, and we used to provide direct numbers and email IDs of people with disability. So the platform had a lot of talent, singers, dancers, comedians, and job seekers, and people who wanted those services could. So it was largely like a classified platform. So that was very early days, and again, it was neither like it was largely hunched towards a non-profit sort of a model as such. So yeah, but 2 3 months down the line, we realized that this would not work. Similarly, we also had a B2C sort of a model where a lot of massagers and physiotherapists with disabilities were there, and people also selling products directly to end consumers. In 3 months, we realized one, volunteer driven platform would not work. Second, B2C is way, way difficult to crack. And again, would not like the kind of money which would be required would be very difficult. So we shifted our entire approach to being a B2B platform, 100% run by employees and not volunteers. So that was very early days of Atypical. And then we added physical infrastructure, digital accessibility, upskilling as such. So anything which a company requires, which stops them from hiring people with disabilities, we do. We cover policies, we cover physical infrastructure accessibility, we cover digital infrastructure, we cover upskilling of people with disabilities as such. So yeah, that is how we started. And then now we have evolved into a full stack end-to-end platform around disability inclusion.
And Vinit, do you remember any story like the first moment of validation, which breakthrough ऐसा story when you started feeling is that, oh my God, this platform is helping, has helped somebody and it's on its way to become big.
So I would say our first breakthrough came when we had one of the largest e-commerce companies in India working with us, getting them onboarded, and then yeah, having more than 200 plus hires through Atypical Advantage. And that was one of the largest companies in the world as such. And I thought that, probably they would have figured out their systems to hire people with disabilities. And a company which had like less than 2 years of experience came and got them 250 plus hires who are all people with disabilities, including the first person on the autism spectrum as such. And I thought that yeah, this could be so big to help people with disabilities at scale. Similarly, for me, I really felt happy when three people, especially artists who were playing piano, getting a full-time job in a five-star hotel, and they still play in this five-star hotel's lobby. For me, that was very satisfying as such. So yeah, we have worked across different disability types. Right now, I'm very, very proud of our work in the manufacturing space, getting more people with disabilities in manufacturing jobs, which was again considered impossible. See, for me, the fun is everywhere you go, people with disabilities would either be working in a very low skilled entry level kind of a job. And my fun is to change that. You would have seen this movie Sitare Zameen Pe, which would have come out, and seven of our talents on our platform were there in that movie who might have got gig work through our platform, and these were people on the autism spectrum. There was one of the girls, and I remember she was with Down syndrome, and every corporate crash provider, we wanted to get people with Down syndrome take care of babies, and we thought that because they have genuine love, warmth, affection, why can't they take care of any baby, like with or without disability? We asked a daycare provider saying that, hey, would you like to do this as a pilot? The daycare provider said no, because they said that there are already so many cases of POXO and all of this in our company where non-disabled people are not able to take care of babies. And here is a person with Down syndrome. We asked parents, and parents said no, like we would not like our baby to be taken care by a person with disabilities because as such. And we finally managed to convince one daycare provider, and now a person with Down syndrome is working in the daycare provider. And the same parents who might have said no call the daycare provider to said that why is she absent even for a day, because my child was missing her. So she's now a shadow teacher there, and she has built such a positive loving environment that babies love coming to that daycare only because of her. Similarly, we recently extended this experiment to a pet boarding provider where now people on the autism spectrum are taking care of pets. And that was again unheard in our country. So yeah, for me, the biggest joy is to do this kind of work. Same way for artwork, a lot of our artists with disabilities are now doing international exhibitions in London and Dubai. And a lot of people, in fact, one of our artists, their mother called me up to say that now he's getting so much work that we need to create a PAN card for him. And I felt so happy that, hey, like, a person, oh, parents had thought that, my child will not be able to do something. And now they are taking care of corporate workshops, earning money as such, and now even applying for a PAN card. So yeah, it has been a full circle moment for me. Every day is a validation. And this work is satisfying at the end of the day.
So you've talked about, so many, kind of forms of talent amongst, people with disabilities. What are the most underestimated forms of talent that you have seen that people with disabilities have, but it's very underestimated?
So, see, first of all, people with disabilities are like, there are some amazing performers,
Mm,
singers, dancers. By the way, we got a show for
mm,
performing at the Rashtrapati Bhavan
nice.
as such. And last year, we were adjudged as the best placement organization for people with disabilities by the President of India itself
Mm,
in general. And some of the underappreciated talents among people with disabilities, I would say, is, for example, we placed people with disabilities from the top institutes, the top two IIMs in the country as such, and 100% of the placements of the summer internship. And this was 2 years back, when you would have heard that the B school placements were on a slide and a lot of campuses were facing problems.
mm,
And this was for the first time where people with disabilities were placed before the non disabled batch in better or equal paying jobs. And we did that. And we were very, very proud of that. And a lot of companies think that people with disabilities can't be leaders, CXOs, or even join the mid level workforce. So we want to change that. Similarly, in terms of art talent,
mm,
for example, we are doing one of the largest beverage companies in the world. Again, we are doing wall murals of 5,000 square feet across five of their factories. And people would think that artists with disabilities might not be able to do such an extensive project. But we are doing this as such, and artists with disabilities are proving them wrong. See, if you look at the history of women, right? Like, women could not drive, might not be good in finance,
mm,
women will not work in science and engineering. All of these notions have been clearly broken, right, for women.
mm.
But for people with disabilities, I think that journey is still ongoing. But in the next 15, 20 years, you'll see some of these barriers also going away. So for me, I think these are some special moments.
And Vinit, you also kind of thinking like, what do companies commonly do wrong when they start inclusive hiring initiatives? And what are the examples of some small operational changes that could create a huge impact?
Yeah, so extremely great question, I would say. Most of the companies, first of all, don't do any disability inclusion programs or gender programs for the sake of doing it in general. Second is, see, without having physical infrastructure and digital accessibility, sometimes they just don't understand some of these things, and just start disability inclusion programs without having a plan in place in general. So, for example, you can't have a person with severe locomotor disability if
Mm,
your workplace itself doesn't have ramps.
mm,
You can start with, let's say, people with visual disability or hearing disability. So, right disability for your company or your environment is important. Without understanding that, don't start running programs as such in general. The third thing I would say is sensitization. Again, a lot of companies, for example, if you are running a recruitment for a persons with hearing disability and you call that candidate and that candidate doesn't pick up,
mm,
you simply as a recruiter might reject the candidate. Failing to even understand that that person, even if he picks up, he'll not be able to speak. And probably that is why he's not picking up the phone. Or if he's picking up, like, communication, verbal communication is not happening. So these are very minor nuances, but companies ignore that. The other piece is upskilling them. I think companies need to invest in skilling programs because of the educational inequalities in the country. So that's there. I'm very, very, sorry to say that a lot of companies prioritize and discriminate even within disabilities. Like, for example, we have seen recruiters and companies telling that give me a less disabled person, or give me a mild disabled person, so that they can actually show that in numbers, as well as have no inconvenience, so-called inconvenience, to companies. The objective of these programs is to support people with disabilities. For example, we only work with uh, anybody who has a greater than 40% disability. As per the law, they are categorized as people with disabilities. Our job of our platform is not to help, uh, you know anybody who wants a job.
Hmm.
So that is again, we are doing certain programs for a reason, and that needs to be worked in a very sacrosanct manner, which a lot of companies don't do as such. Like, and especially these things of bucketing disabilities,
Yeah.
or even trying to just have people with token disabilities in general just for meeting your numbers. It doesn't help your organization or even persons with disabilities.
Right. No, we need for every founder, it's a journey, and this is filled with failures, successes, some hard moments, toughest calls. Do you remember, those moments? Maybe talk around one or two moments where things failed despite best intentions being there.
See, again, for example, look at our work, right? Like, I
Mm.
can tell you the viewers who would be listening to this would be worried about that, how did we manage to even secure any funding if we have ever as such. So, because this kind of work would not attract the top VCs in general, because it's largely a social venture. You don't have hyper scale, which VCs would want.
Mm.
So I remember when, initially I was looking for the right kind of people to join Atypical Advantage. As such, I myself had a lot of doubts that, why would people give me money
Mm.
um, in general? And we had a lot of tough criterias. For example, our pitch, the first slide of our pitch clearly states that if you want to prioritize financial returns over social returns, then we are not the company for
Mm.
you. And if you are also willing to get your money to zero with a very mediocre return
Yes.
and would prioritize social returns, this could be an avenue. So we were very clear with the kind of people we wanted, and we had defined it. So initially we thought we'll not get anybody, but we managed to secure like 1 CR in seed funding after 1 year. As such, where a lot of people believed in us, and these were like some of the best people in the philanthropic space as well as the business space.
Mm.
So I would not say that as a failure, but I stuck to uh, the kind of people I wanted, and I got. And just a funny thing there, that now we have an investor waitlist of
Mm.
people who wants to
Right.
join us as such. So that was probably tough. And right now, if I look at it, I think, and the other thing there is, by the way, people, all my shareholders have also helped me to connect with companies. See, we are working with close to 500 large companies in India, and a lot of credit for that belongs to them.
Mm.
So yeah, like, I've got my shareholders to work
Yes.
such. So that's something sweet to me personally. And then I think the moment when the one of the persons on the spectrum told me that he needs to have a PAN card was very special in general. And see, failures, we shut down two verticals. I would like, for example, like the initial B2C vertical of selling products, as well as service professionals like urban company, like where you had massagers and physiotherapists on demand, like how urban company is doing now. We
Mm.
started that 5 years back, but obviously, it requires a lot of executional and operational capabilities, as such, which we were not able to do. And like here, I would like to just tell you a small story. Like, sometimes imagine a blind singer
Mm.
going to a show at a private home,
Mm.
or a blind masseuse going to a home of a person to do massage. There is talent there,
Mm.
and on other side there could be, people who are good, definitely, and there are people who could also be bad. Imagine for a blind girl or a boy, it would be so difficult, and it would, like, for us to manage that entire end to end experience from a safety point of view would be very difficult. So we stopped that entirely because we thought that our talent or our people on our platform need to be safe
Mm.
first, and the rest all things should happen later. Initially, we did not understand that. And the first 6 months, we realized our mistake and corrected it. So that was another failure, uh, I would say.
Mm.
And the third thing is, again, see, we still take a lot of time in convincing companies to hire people with disabilities. Sometimes it goes beyond 1 year of convincing the top leadership to hire people with disabilities, because everyone wants to stay safe,
Mm.
stay conservative,
Mm.
right? saying that, what's the need if everything is going correct? What's the need of even employing people with disabilities or even experimenting with it? Why, if something happens, if something goes wrong, what about my safety protocols? So that's again, I would say it takes a lot of time for us to break this attitudinal barrier, right? Like you would understand that acceptance and attitudinal barrier is the biggest thing in most of the companies with.
Right. Did you also think we need of kind of taking it to other countries, or you are focused right now only on India?
Great questions. Again, last year I traveled to Singapore and Japan, and again, people think that since we are from the global south,
Hmm.
we are not good enough versus the advanced or the developed countries. By the way, Typical Advantage would be the only social venture in the world with this kind of space and impact. And we had offers from Singapore, Dubai, and Japan to start similar things in their countries. But we are still mulling because the governments of these nations have insisted. So we are just thinking around it as such. But as per now, we want to stick to India, at least from an hiring point of view. We're launching something called a Typical Academy,
Yes.
which will probably will come later. That is something which we are trying to see if we can launch that globally.
Yeah. Before we come to Atypical Academy, I have got a question. How has this journey changed you? As a person, as a professional, if you can kind of reflect on that.
So, see, I am now just committed to this problem. I would not say that. See, this again. Let me be probably the way it would have changed me. See, some initially when I used to work, at least the 0 to 2 years of my journey, when parents used to say that, "Hey, thank you for giving my child an opportunity," or "Thank
Mm,
you for getting him a job," or even a person with disability coming to me and just
mm,
thanking me. I think some of these things go to a founder's head. First of all, I believe that I'm neither doing any favor on the society, world, or people with disabilities to get them an opportunity as such. And when you get, all of these awards, and it creates a lot of false sense of ego even within the team, right? Like someone praising you for your work and someone like inviting your family to a lunch or a
mm,
dinner in any of the city, because we would have helped so many people with disabilities across most of the Indian cities, that wherever we go there is some personal touch, and our team is inundated with some of these grateful messages, which is great and the best part of doing our work.
mm.
But the not so glamorous part about doing all of this is it creates ego on that individual who does that work. And so I have now learned to be extremely grounded as an individual. Even if we are getting people with disabilities a job, I tell my team to ignore all of these praises and just put your head down and start working and continue to work in general.
Mm.
So, yeah, I have probably become more grounded because of my work. None of any praise or any of these messages make me happy. Actually, I am still the same person in both scenarios. And yeah, it's also because of Vipassana, which I had done.
Yes.
So it's a combination of different things. Then second thing is, I think our recruitment style has changed a lot. Like for example, 90% of the people in our team love pets.
Mm,
30% of them are people with disabilities. 60% of them are women.
mm,
And we technically now look for people who love pets
mm.
in general as a recruitment strategy, because we believe that they are more compassionate to understand people with disabilities. So yeah, that's another thing which has changed. And third thing, in and it's again like our work in manufacturing, uh, as such, like some of the largest companies in the world, and convincing CXOs at the top to hire people with disabilities in manufacturing was one of my biggest achievements personally. Like India's first investment in semiconductors, in chip making, was Micron, and their people with disabilities are now making chips in technical roles,
Mm,
which was not possible. People with disabilities are now making vehicles for defense,
mm.
like where an entire engine line is now comprised of people with disabilities across one of the largest automobile companies in India. A lot of companies are publicly committed to 5% and 10% of disability representation in their new plants and existing plants in a lot of FMCG companies.
Mm.
And that has happened because of us. So, yeah, some of these things make me very, very happy to convince the exos at the top to seeing people with disabilities finally working. and that too in manufacturing across a lot of companies in pharma, FMCG, chip making, automobiles, and I hope that I'm able to get more people with disabilities there.
So it started with giving them opportunity, but now you have also got into skilling. So you have started Atypical Academy. Would love to understand from you, Vineet, like why traditional learning systems fail persons with disability and how Atypical Advantage is trying to solve that. Atypical Academy is trying to solve that.
So, see, let's first look at the numbers in the educational space. And I am extremely impatient as an individual. And when I don't see any solution, I really get impatient. I wished someone else would have solved this problem. See, 85% of people with disabilities don't go to schools. And
Yes.
everyone knows why, right? Like, if you're a blind person, just try going to a mainstream school. The principal would say, my school is not equipped for you. I did in one of the best business schools
Yes.
with the same students with or without disabilities in the most competitive of places,
Yes.
just with an accessible laptop and some support from IM Bangalore.
Yes.
So technically, I fail to understand why can't a person with disability study in a mainstream school. So we realize that that is number one, and number two, if you look at it, look at in a country where JE is like, where people fight for JE seats, 15 lakh people would write IIT JE exams, and there is reservation for people with disabilities, which is around 5% in most of the central university and the top tier colleges. The funny part is, while all of the quotas and all other categories get filled in,
But disability
and
doesn't. Yes.
disability, the number of seats, there are roughly 1,000 seats in IITs for
Hmm.
people with disabilities, and one third also might not get filled, which
Yes.
just shows that number one, obviously, like, far-fetched that people with disabilities are not good enough or not interested in some of this. So first of all, we want to train people with disabilities because, see, if you look at the coaching mechanism or the schooling mechanism for people with disabilities, it has never been there, right? Screen reader support, sign language friendly books, or even slower pace
Yes.
as per my need. No, none of the traditional coaching or schooling platforms would look into it. So that's number one. Number two, like, imagine you're blind and you want to learn advanced Excel. Where would you learn that? There is no place in this country or even globally to learn advanced Excel for blind people. Like, I learned this thing on my own, juggling YouTube and Google, but not everybody can do that.
Yes.
The other piece is just look at our technical education, right? Like ITI, people with disabilities study data entry and computer and programming applications for getting into manufacturing. There is no opportunity, like, and these streams don't get them a job. A lot of places, government itself would not permit a person with disability to take science. Like, take for example Maharashtra, where
Yes.
people with disabilities are replaced from maths to arithmetic after standard 8 as per the design and as per the laws passed by the state government. You would already be aware that people with disabilities fought for being doctors or even writing the IIT JEE exam. 5-10 years back, people with disabilities were not given science as a stream, right? Because they were not fit or good enough as per India's laws. Someone fought that law and we are here. And I want to just take that to a different degree and get more people with disabilities into India's colleges and upskill them as such. And again, another thing is most of the CSR programs in the country, right? They would work on a 3 month, 6 month, or even 1 year interventions. But
Yes.
tell me if someone's fundamental education is a miss. 1 year CSR program or 2 year CSR programs don't yield any result for any marginalized community. Either you start from the inception to correct some of this because of brain plasticity. A person working with a young adult with disability and making them great at maths and English would be way, way difficult versus mentoring them from the beginning. Another piece, again, here, if you look at it, let's look for deaf people. A lot of them might know sign language, but the focus on written English communication is not there at
Yes.
all. So a lot of people with hearing disability started learning English through us, where we were educating them, upskilling them into English education. And we thought that if you just try to Google, say that you are non-disabled and you want to learn sign language, you'll find tons of material, resource available which will teach you sign language. Just say that I am deaf and I am looking for a quality English course to be learned, you'll not find any relevant thing, and it's very unfortunate. So what Atypical Academy tries to do is change some of this, and we are launching very interesting courses for people with disabilities so that they get upskilled. Because see, with AI coming into the picture, the educational gap will only widen. So we want to probably change some of this.
Would like to talk more about Atypical Academy, like, how learning is structured for accessibility. And if you could, kind of narrate one or two learner story from start to outcome.
Okay. So, see, first of all, we are launching an AI tutor around different types of disability. So, you mention your disability that you're blind, dyslexic, autistic, slow learner, and it will teach you as per your pace. So, that's one differentiation there. Second, our entire LMS is screen reader friendly. So, you can use whatever screen reader you have as a blind individual. So, that's second. Third thing is we are trying to connect with mentors who would have seen your journey. So, for example, if you are a person with visual disability, we'll try to connect you to a blind person who would have made into an IIT so that you are able to relate and resonate better as such. And see, the other piece is we also can help you figure out job opportunities because we would know once you enter a top college, and we'll have 3 4 years to figure out the best outcome as per your own potential. So it's largely trying to help you from the college till the job and even post job
Yes.
in general. See, for coming to a couple of learners who would have, for example, we are launching. This is a batch of 25 people on the autism spectrum who are learning UI UX from us, and some of the best outcome has come from them, where a lot of them are also getting gig work to make posters, logos, and even landing pages. So that's again unheard for people on the autism spectrum doing that. A lot of deaf people are able to write good, fluent written English as such because we have worked for more than 2 years in this space trying to figure out the best English education, and wanted to tell you that one of the largest deaf colleges in India recommend their graduate students to take an English course from us. So that just shows the quality of the content which we have created. And we are looking for our first batches of IIT and CUET because we have recently launched these two. So I don't have a success story there. It will take us 2 years for getting people with disabilities trained so that, we wait for those success stories. But my dream is to get like, all India rank one or get at least 50 to 70 people with disabilities in the top 500 ranks. Because if I can do that, I am very sure most of the attitudinal bias towards
Yes.
people with disabilities will get solved.
You were talking about deaf colleges. So the government has tried to, kind of build a lot of colleges for people with disabilities. Where do you think the gaps is there, especially for these colleges?
So, see, first of all, there are very few colleges where people with disability, very few is like again less than five, I would say, specific to disability, which are good in the sense. So that's number one. See, the gap is, for example, a lot of deaf schools in a country might not even have sign language support. So deaf people might be just sitting and not doing anything. Like I don't know if you saw this movie called Shrikant, where it highlighted, right, that the scribes or the teachers used to write exams for blind people, and that is how they used to get 90% and above. So see, some of the schooling and even colleges have not been great for people with disabilities because again, people think that they can't work, and what will even happen if we educate them.
So as per Vineet, what should an inclusive skilling look like in India in the coming decade?
So, as I told you, first of all, for me, see, there is the new education policy which has come up, right? First of all, I don't want people with disabilities to study in a blind school or a deaf school. I want them to study in a mainstream school. If you look at the West, they study in a mainstream school. And again, this is not a blanket suggestion, but it also would depend on the severity of disability and other factors. Majority of the people with disabilities can study in mainstream schools. This needs to change. So that's number one. Number two, again, blind schools and deaf schools need to have more exposure towards mingling with non-disabled people. If we want diversity and inclusion across our school levels for non-disabled kids, we also need to have diversity and inclusion for disabled kids. So that's number two. And the third is, again, accessibility should not be an afterthought. It should be part of your design piece itself. Like all schools should be made mandatory to have ramps and accessible washrooms, as well as screen reader material, like from design stage. Now, ramp is not a afterthought. If you go to any of India's airport, you'll always find a ramp. Yes. Right? Because someone thought it to be. So I want schooling also to change from a design first and universal design, where all of this needs to have ramps, screen reader friendly versions, sensitized teachers, so that our education from the beginning is corrected. And again, the last thing from an inclusion point of view is to make all our special schools and blind schools and deaf schools more competitive and getting them more exposure with non-disabled people. So yeah.
This is great, Vineet, and thank you for sharing all these experiences, insights. And what I feel is that you started with, say, the opportunities part, and now you have backward integrated with the skilling piece. And what we also think is that maybe couple of years down the line, you will also think of establishing your own educational institutions for which gives degrees and all those things for disabled people. Means, is it going to be the plan?
See, that again will not help people with disabilities. See, why I am trying to do something like, for example, getting more people with disabilities in manufacturing and even getting skilling in ITIs in electronics mechanics, because no one else is doing it. Having a separate school or a college would not solve the problem, right? Like, I'll actually compound more inequality and more separation for people with disabilities. So having a separate school or college would never be a plan as such. Having an inclusive is the way to go for every school and college, right? Why not work at a policy and advocacy level to change that first piece? Because atypical will never be able to, like, let's say, be there in every district, and it's not the best use of my time and anybody's capital also. So instead of that, why not, uh, like, probably tell schools to be more inclusive and make them study in the same school. Like, if you already have IITs and IMs, which
Yes.
are the institutes of excellence in our country, like having an Indian Institute of People with Disabilities won't solve it, right? Like, the quality would degrade, because at the end, I have learned from my batchmates a lot within IMs itself, right? And that is a different kind of learning. And AI anyways will compound some of this, where the only learning would be from people, I would say. All the other things AI will democratize, like be it a doctor or a lawyer. These exceptions and that decision making would be on human beings.
And now at last, I've got two questions. One is that why is the name atypical?
Okay. So, see, first of all, I did not want to use the word disability in, though that is not a negative word. I was trying to find out a good domain name. So there is a very famous case study called the Autism Advantage, which talks about, how having people on the autism spectrum has led to more productivity and so on. And it's I just figured out the domain name was available, and yeah, it fitted in with our mission. And now people actually say that this is one of the best names for a disability led platform. Typical advantage, it's like, the advantage of having people with disabilities, and again, not the typical hire or not the typical thing. It's not a normal or a usual piece. So the advantage of hiring people with disabilities, so that is how we got the name. And there is a very famous Netflix documentary also called The Atypical Asset. So yeah, there was some resonance. We finally found the domain name.
And the second is that how many people in India, especially the corporates and all those, told you, Vineet, this is not going to work out. You are kind of doing a bad stuff.
See, that is part of the work. I would say, like, a lot of corporates, see, everybody has said that this will not work out. It's not, I would say, just go and show our website to any of the investors or any of the VCs you would know. They would say this is a pathetic idea and it will not work. And why is he not doing a charity or an NGO? A very classic question. We did not build this as an NGO, right? It's a for-profit social venture. Same way, corporates, again, they are saying, why are you even trying so hard? Skill is not there among people with disabilities, or this will not work. See, some things you don't do for money and all the other stuff. You do it because it's worth doing, and there is no rationale for that.
Thank you so much, Vineet. And it actually worked out. So if you are a person with disability watching this session, really go and check out Atypical Academy, where you can, kind of upskill yourself and then can go on Atypical Advantage to get a relevant opportunity for yourself as well. If you are a parent who has got a kid who may be disabled, don't think it as a curse. Remember that your kid has got some great talent which can be nurtured with the help of Atypical Advantage and Atypical Academy. This has actually worked, and this is the need of the day, that we make a more and more inclusive society. And we are extremely thankful to entrepreneurs like Vineet who have taken this initiative forward and have created great impact, especially for people जिनको लोग मतलब हटा देते थे कि यार इसको डाउन सिंड्रोम है, इसको तो घर पे रहना होगा, ये तो हमेशा मम्मी के साथ रहेगा। ऐसे लोगों को मेन स्ट्रीम में लाने के लिए थैंक यू सो मच विनीत फॉर जॉइनिंग अस, एंड थैंक यू सो मच फॉर डूइंग such a fabulous entrepreneurship instant. Thanks.